As they find the crossing where the canyon opens up, the water is slower at this point of the river. A large shadow goes by Hank and Alara's position along the river bank under the water. No one saw it as it moved quickly under the ripples of the swollen river. Hank and Alara agree on a good campsite. Hank calls for all the goats, and they come running up to Hank in the new campsite. Hank starts the job of unloading the goats. Alara, knowing how Hank set up the camp the night before, started gathering all the materials that Hank used to build the last camp the night before. Hank looks over and sees Alara working and gather material for camp, and this made Hank think about that old saying, many hands make light work. Camp is going to be built in half the time it normally takes. It's nice to have someone in camp that watches and learns and takes the initiative to get her done. No need to ask Alara, just jump right into action, and this pleased Hank very deeply. Hank turned the goats out and brought all their camp and personal gear over to where Alara was digging a Dakota fire pit. Hank gave Alara an approving grin and a head nod of approval. She's good, Hank thought to himself. Alara and Hank finished setting up camp with plenty of daylight to go fishing for dinner. Hank reaches into one of the packs and pulled out a bundle of triggers for spring-loaded fish snares and a pack full of fishing line hook sinkers and bobbers. They found a few backwaters and started to set up the snares. Alara started turning logs and rocks over, looking for worms, grubs, or anything they could use for bait. Hank cut some long saplings and an equal number of shorter saplings and sharpens one end of each sapling. Hank pounds one short stave into the ground and pulled it out and replaced it with the longer one and shoved it into the ground as hard as he could into the open hole. Hank pounds a short stave into the ground as tight and close to the large sapling. Then he unravels pre-cut twine and wraps the two together. He attaches the trigger lines and fishing lines, baits the hook, and gives a good swing and a toss into the backwater. He then sets the trigger by pulling the sapling down halfway to the A-frame trigger, set deeply in the ground, and sets the trigger. Then gets back to setting up the other 3 spring snares. Alara watches Hank, closely watching how he is setting up the fish snares for future reference. Alara heads back to camp and gets her fly fishing rod from her pack and sets it up and starts fishing. Right away on the 3rd cast, she nails a really nice rainbow, and she knows it's big enough to feed both of them tonight. Now, all she has to do is land it. The rainbow flies into the air, trying to shake the hook out of its lip, and lands back into the water and starts running out the drag. Alara adjusts the drag, but it keeps going. Another adjustment, and it is still running out her line. She gives the drag another adjustment, and the line snaps with that heart-breaking sound of your line snapping. Dang, she said out loud, it snapped my line. Just then she thought she saw a large shadow going downstream in the water. She saw it, but did she? She thought, did I really just see a huge shadow take my fish? Nothing that big lives in these high mountain rivers. Yes, it did take my fish, she said to herself out loud. Hank heard Alara and said, what? Alara said, something huge just stole my fish I had on, and it snapped my line. Hank asked, what stole your fish? Something huge, she replied. Was it a river otter, Hank asked. No, it was too big for that. Hank asked, well, how big was it? Alara said, if I have to guess, 30 or 40 feet. Sounds crazy, right? But that is what I saw, a large shadow, and I have no idea what it is or could have been. Well, you might want to step back from the edge of the water, just in case it's still hungry. Is this another mutation, or is this something else, Hank thought to himself. Everybody knows and has seen some sort or form of mutant creatures everywhere, but no reported attacks. And if Hank himself didn't see one, he might have thought less of the reports, but Hank takes these things seriously. Alara still isn't talking about her injury, and this gets Hank wondering if she's too afraid to say something unbelievable attacked her. Many people are in disbelief of these things' existence, but Hank is a believer. Believing is seeing. Hank thinks he's going to push the question tonight at camp after dinner. If they can catch a fish and the fish haven't been chased out and too spooked to feed, with something that big nearby, fishing can be problematic. They may have to be content and grateful for the cold meal of dried meat or pemmican. Hopefully Alara will make that same herbal tea that she made this morning. That was really good and energizing. Hank and Alara headed back to camp. Hank will come back later to check on the traps a bit and hopefully a grilled or roasted fish for dinner. It's been a few days since Hank has anything fresh to eat except Alara's mother's tea, and a smile comes over his face, thinking that was the first time he can remember since the event, that someone served him anything other than regret. With that thought, Hank realized how little he knows about Alara, and is he starting to trust and rely on her too much too soon? Hank resides that only time will tell. Remain neutral towards her, and be guarded of your thoughts. Back in camp, the two get about sitting up their bedrolls. Hank offers Alara a 10 feet by 10 feet tarp to make a debris mattress. Alara said she hasn't slept on a real mattress in a long time. She said it really is nice to have all these pack goats and not be laden down yourself with a couple 100 pounds of gear and food to travel around with. Hank agreed with a smile and another nod. Alara asked, since she never heard of a debris mattress, exactly how does one make a debris mattress? Well, Hank said, clearing his throat, and talked Alara through the steps of making a debris mattress. First, Hank exclaims you need to lace up the tarp through those grommets. Make a bag and leave one end open. Use your feet like this and scrape the debris in a pile, and place the bags open end close to the pile and scrape all the debris into it until it's full. Then finish lacing it up. Easy peasy. With that final work on the camp done, Hank strolls over to the goats and Scout, laying there watching the goats. Scout comes and greets Hank with a helicopter tail wag. Hank reaches down and loves on Scout for a moment. Then Hank gathered up the goats and staked them out for the night, about 20 yards from camp. Alara offers to go check the snare traps, but Hank asks her to wait, and they'll both check them together. Hank said to Alara, "We don't know what's lurking in that water, yet